Betrayal cuts deep. It's one of those moments that can leave you feeling raw, exposed, and questioning everything you thought you knew about trust. Maybe it was a friend who turned their back on you, a partner who broke a promise, or even a colleague who undermined you when you least expected it. Whatever the scenario, betrayal has a way of shaking us to our core. But here's the thing. What if I told you that betrayal, as painful as it is, could actually be one of the most powerful opportunities for growth in your life? That's where Stoicism comes in. The ancient Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, believed that external events, no matter how hurtful, are not within our control. What we can control, however, is how we respond to them. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Today, we're going to explore how to handle betrayal like a true Stoic. We'll dive into principles like acceptance, resilience, and emotional detachment, and I'll show you how to turn this painful experience into a chance for profound personal growth. So, if you're ready to approach betrayal not as a wound but as a stepping stone, let's begin. What does betrayal truly mean in Stoic philosophy? At its core, betrayal is an external event, a thing that happens outside of us. It isn't inherently good or bad, it simply is. The Stoics teach us that it's our judgments about these events, not the events themselves, that shape our suffering. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it plainly: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. What he's pointing to is the power of perspective. Betrayal, whether from a friend, a colleague, or even a loved one, doesn't have to control your inner world. You get to decide how much weight it carries. Let's take a modern example. Imagine you worked hard on a project at your job, only to have a coworker take credit for your efforts. That sting of betrayal is real, but here's the Stoic question. Is the coworker's action stealing credit what's truly causing your pain, or is it your interpretation of it? The Stoics would argue that the coworker's behavior is outside your control. What is within your control is how you choose to respond. Do you let anger consume you, or do you focus on what you can do next? This shift in focus is at the heart of Stoicism. Now think about your own life. How often do you let external events dictate your emotional state? The Stoic approach invites you to pause and ask yourself, is this event within my control? If not, why am I giving it so much power over me? By reframing betrayal as something external, a fact of life rather than a personal attack, you begin to reclaim your peace of mind. It's not about ignoring the pain, but about understanding that the pain doesn't have to define you. Betrayal happens, but your response is where your power lies. Betrayal can feel like a storm, crashing waves of anger, sadness, and confusion all at once. But what if you could step back from the chaos and see it for what it truly is, just an event, not a definition of who you are? This is where the power of cognitive detachment comes in. It's the ability to separate yourself from your emotions, not to suppress them, but to observe them without letting them take control. As Seneca once said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Our emotions can enslave us, but detachment gives us the clarity to break free. Think of it like this: when you're caught in a heated moment, your emotions are like a fog clouding your judgment. Cognitive detachment is the sunlight that burns through that fog, allowing you to see clearly and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic thinkers, faced betrayal repeatedly during his reign. Yet he chose to view these betrayals as opportunities to practice virtue, not as personal attacks. He wrote in his Meditations, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." By detaching from the emotional weight of betrayal, he was able to act with wisdom and integrity, even in the face of deceit. So let's ask ourselves, what would it feel like to observe betrayal without letting it consume you? Imagine standing on the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. You see the storm, but you're not in it. That's the essence of cognitive detachment. It's not about denying your feelings, but about choosing how much power they have over you. When you master this skill, you reclaim your ability to respond to life's challenges with calm and clarity, rather than being swept away by the tide of emotion. Betrayal is often a reminder of how little we control. No matter how much we trust someone or how carefully we navigate our relationships, we can never fully dictate the actions of others. This is where the Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control becomes so powerful. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, famously taught that some things are within our control, like our thoughts, actions, and reactions, while others, like the behavior of others, are not. Trying to control what's beyond our reach only leads to frustration and suffering. Think about a time when a close friend betrayed your trust. It's a painful experience, no doubt, but the Stoic approach asks us to shift our focus. Instead of dwelling on the betrayal itself, something you couldn't control, consider how you respond to it. That's where your power lies. By accepting that you can't change what's already happened, you free yourself from the emotional weight of trying to control the uncontrollable. This doesn't mean you excuse the betrayal or ignore your feelings. It means you stop letting it consume you. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." This isn't about passive resignation. It's about recognizing the natural order of life. People will act as they choose, and circumstances will unfold as they will. Our task is to meet these realities with clarity and strength, not resistance. So take a moment to reflect. What areas of your life are you trying to control that are beyond your power? Are you holding onto resentment, trying to change someone else's behavior, or wishing for a different outcome? These are the moments where Stoicism invites us to pause, breathe, and redirect our energy toward what we can influence: our own thoughts, choices, and actions. In doing so, we reclaim our peace and step into a more grounded, resilient version of ourselves. Betrayal can feel like a wound that never heals, but what if I told you it could be a gift? A gift wrapped in pain, yes, but one that holds the potential to transform you in ways you never imagined. This is the Stoic perspective, seeing betrayal not as a defeat, but as an opportunity. The Stoics believed that every obstacle, every hardship was a chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about this. He said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." In other words, adversity isn't just something to endure, it's a teacher shaping us into better versions of ourselves. Think about it like this: when someone betrays you, it's a moment of brutal honesty. It reveals their true character, but more importantly, it reveals your own. How do you respond? Do you crumble or do you rise? The Stoics would argue that betrayal gives you a rare opportunity to practice virtues like courage, forgiveness, and self-control. It's a test of your character, and like any test, it's designed to make you grow. Take, for example, a modern scenario. Imagine a business partner betrays your trust. They take credit for your work, or worse, sabotage your efforts. At first, it feels like a devastating blow. But what if, instead of dwelling on the betrayal, you used it as fuel? What if you channeled that pain into building something even greater? Many of the most successful people in history have faced betrayal, and they've used it as a catalyst for reinvention. They didn't let the betrayal define them, they let it refine them. So, what about you? What lessons could betrayal be teaching you right now? Maybe it's showing you who your true allies are. Maybe it's revealing a weakness in your own boundaries or decision-making, or perhaps it's simply reminding you that you're stronger than you think. The key is to shift your perspective, to see betrayal not as a curse but as a challenge. And challenges, as the Stoics remind us, are where growth happens. This doesn't mean you have to forgive instantly or pretend the betrayal didn't hurt. It simply means choosing to focus on what you can gain from the experience rather than what you've lost. After all, the greatest gift betrayal can give you is the chance to become the person you are always meant to be. So the next time you feel the sting of betrayal, ask yourself, how can I turn this pain into power? The answer might just change your life. How do Stoics build emotional resilience in the face of betrayal? The answer lies in one of their most powerful tools, premeditatio malorum, or the practice of preparing for adversity. This isn't about dwelling on the negative or expecting the worst at every turn. Instead, it's about mentally rehearsing challenges so that when they arise, you're not caught off guard. By imagining how betrayal might unfold and how you'd respond, you're training your mind to remain steady even in the storm. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: it's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters. This idea is at the heart of emotional resilience. When betrayal strikes, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by anger, hurt, or disappointment. But Stoics remind us that these emotions, while natural, don't have to control us. By practicing premeditatio malorum, you're not avoiding pain, you're preparing to meet it with clarity and strength. Let's take a practical example: journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings after a betrayal can be incredibly grounding. It allows you to process your emotions without letting them spiral out of control. A Stoic journal entry might include reflections like, what can I learn from this situation? How can I grow stronger through this experience? This kind of intentional reflection helps you shift from reacting impulsively to responding thoughtfully. So, what steps can you take today to build your emotional resilience? Start small. Spend a few minutes each day envisioning potential challenges and how you'd handle them. Write down your thoughts to create a space for calm reflection. And remember, resilience isn't about never feeling pain, it's about learning to move through it with purpose and grace. Stoicism teaches that virtue is the only true good, a principle that shines brightest in the face of betrayal. When someone betrays us, it's easy to feel justified in lashing out or seeking revenge. But the Stoic approach invites us to rise above those impulses and act with virtue instead. Virtue in Stoic philosophy is built on 4 pillars: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These aren't just abstract ideals, they're practical tools for navigating even the most painful moments of betrayal. Wisdom reminds us to step back and assess the situation without letting anger cloud our judgment. It asks us to consider why the betrayal happened and whether our reaction will serve our long-term well-being. Courage, on the other hand, gives us the strength to face the hurt head-on without shrinking away or retaliating. It's about standing firm in our principles even when it feels easier to give in to bitterness. Justice calls us to treat others fairly even when they've wronged us. And temperance helps us avoid extremes, neither suppressing our emotions nor letting them spiral out of control. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, often reflected on the importance of maintaining integrity, no matter how others behave. He wrote that we cannot control what others do, but we can always choose how we respond. This is the essence of virtue, aligning our actions with our deepest values, even when the world feels chaotic or unjust. Consider the example of Cato the Younger, a Roman statesman known for his unwavering commitment to Stoic principles. When faced with political betrayal and the rise of Julius Caesar's dictatorship, Cato chose to uphold his values rather than compromise his integrity. His response wasn't about winning or seeking revenge. It was about staying true to what he believed was right. His legacy endures not because he triumphed over his enemies, but because he remained virtuous in the face of immense adversity. So, how can you respond to betrayal in a way that aligns with your values? Start by asking yourself what kind of person you want to be in this moment. Will you let the actions of others dictate your behavior, or will you choose to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance? The path of virtue isn't always easy, but it's the one that leads to true strength and inner peace. By focusing on what you can control, your own actions and mindset, you transform betrayal from a source of pain into an opportunity for growth. When betrayal strikes, resentment often follows. It's a natural response, a way to process the injustice and pain. But here's the hard truth: resentment doesn't punish the person who hurt you. It only chains you to the past, keeping the wound fresh and raw. The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw resentment as a poison we drink, hoping it will harm someone else. Seneca once wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." It's a reminder that holding on to anger doesn't heal us, it only deepens the hurt. So, how do we let go? Forgiveness, not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve peace. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, isn't about excusing the betrayal or pretending it didn't happen. It's about releasing the emotional grip it has on us. It's choosing to say, "This hurt me, but I won't let it define me." Think of forgiveness as a gift you give yourself, a way to reclaim your freedom and move forward unburdened. Let's bring this into a modern context. Imagine a family member betrays your trust. Maybe they shared a secret you confided in them, or they took advantage of your kindness. The sting is real, and the temptation to hold onto resentment is strong. But what happens if you choose to forgive? Over time, the weight of that anger begins to lift. You're no longer replaying the betrayal in your mind, no longer letting it dictate your emotions. You're free to focus on what truly matters: your growth, your peace, your life. So here's a question to reflect on. What resentment are you holding onto that's weighing you down? Is it a betrayal from a friend, a partner, or even yourself? Whatever it is, consider this: every moment you spend clinging to resentment is a moment you could spend building something better. Letting go isn't easy, but it's worth it. Because when you release the resentment, you make room for something far more powerful: your own resilience. How can changing your perspective change your experience of betrayal? This is a question that lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, and it's one that can transform how we process pain and disappointment. When betrayal strikes, it's natural to feel like the world is closing in, like this one event defines your entire reality. But Stoicism teaches us to step back, to view the situation from a higher vantage point, as if we were observing it from above. This practice, often referred to as the view from above, invites us to see our struggles in the context of something much larger than ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often reflected on this idea in his meditations. He reminded himself that most human conflicts, no matter how intense they feel in the moment, are tiny when viewed against the vastness of time and space. The sting of betrayal, while deeply personal, is just one thread in the intricate tapestry of life. By adopting this broader perspective, we can begin to see that what feels like a crushing blow today might not hold the same weight tomorrow, next week, or a year from now. Let's take a practical example. Imagine someone close to you betrays your trust. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to feel devastated, to let anger and hurt consume you. But what if you paused and asked yourself, how will I feel about this a year from now? Will it still matter as much? More often than not, the answer is no. Over time, the sharp edges of pain soften, and what once felt like an insurmountable obstacle becomes a distant memory. This isn't to minimize your feelings, it's about recognizing that your emotions, as real as they are temporary. By reframing the betrayal as a minor event in the grand scheme of your life, you take away some of its power over you. This shift in perspective doesn't mean ignoring your pain or pretending it doesn't exist. Instead, it's about choosing not to let that pain define you. When you step back and see the bigger picture, you create space for clarity and growth. You remind yourself that life is filled with ups and downs, and betrayal is just one of many experiences you'll encounter. By embracing this mindset, you can move forward with resilience, knowing that even the deepest wounds heal with time. So the next time betrayal shakes your world, try asking yourself, how will this look to me a year from now? The answer might just change everything. Inner peace is not the absence of betrayal, but the ability to remain calm despite it. This is one of the most profound lessons Stoicism offers us, a reminder that our tranquility doesn't depend on what happens around us, but on how we respond to it. The Stoics believed that true peace comes from within, and it's something we can cultivate through mindfulness and self-discipline, even in the face of life's most unsettling moments. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet powerful idea is the foundation of finding inner peace. Betrayal can feel like a storm, shaking everything we thought was stable. But the Stoics teach us that we can choose to be the eye of that storm, calm, centered, and untouchable. It's not about ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about acknowledging the hurt while refusing to let it control us. One way to practice this is through mindfulness. When betrayal strikes, our minds often spiral into anger, sadness, or confusion. But mindfulness allows us to observe those emotions without being consumed by them. It's like standing on the shore and watching the waves crash. You see the chaos, but you're not swept away by it. For example, after experiencing betrayal, taking a few moments to meditate can help you ground yourself. Focus on your breath, acknowledge the feelings that arise, and then let them pass without judgment. This small act of self-discipline can be a powerful step toward reclaiming your peace. Another Stoic practice is to remind yourself of what's within your control and what's not. You can't control how others behave, but you can control how you respond. This shift in perspective is liberating. It frees you from the burden of trying to change what's outside your power and redirects your energy toward what you can influence: your thoughts, your actions, and your attitude. So, what practices help you maintain inner peace during difficult times? Whether it's journaling, spending time in nature, or simply taking a moment to breathe, these small acts of self-care can be anchors in the chaos. Inner peace isn't something you find, it's something you build, one mindful moment at a time. And even in the face of betrayal, it's always within your reach. Attachment to others, loyalty can feel like a lifeline, but in reality, it often becomes a source of deep suffering. The Stoics understood this truth well. They taught that placing too much emotional weight on how others behave, especially when it comes to their loyalty or betrayal, sets us up for pain. Why? Because we can't control what others do, only how we respond. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, warned against the dangers of emotional dependency. He believed that tying our happiness to someone else's actions is like building a house on shifting sand. It's only a matter of time before it collapses. Take, for example, a romantic betrayal. Imagine investing years of trust and love into a relationship, only to discover that the other person has been unfaithful. The initial reaction might be anger, sadness, or even despair, but the Stoic approach invites us to ask a different question. Why did we tie our sense of worth and happiness so tightly to this person's actions? It's not about dismissing the hurt or pretending it doesn't matter. It's about recognizing that our suffering often stems from our attachment to an outcome we couldn't control. This is where the Stoic art of non-attachment comes in. It's not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about freeing ourselves from the emotional chains that bind us to others' choices. Non-attachment means loving deeply but without expectation. It means caring for others while understanding that their actions are ultimately their own. When we practice this, we're no longer at the mercy of someone else's decisions. We reclaim our peace. So how might non-attachment change your approach to relationships? Instead of fearing betrayal, you might focus on building trust and connection without clinging to the idea that it must last forever. Instead of reacting with devastation when someone lets you down, you might respond with clarity and strength, knowing that their actions reflect their character, not your worth. Non-attachment doesn't mean giving up on meaningful relationships. It means engaging in them with a healthier, more resilient mindset. It's a way of loving fully while staying grounded in your own inner stability. How can Stoics build trust without becoming dependent on others? This is a delicate balance, one that requires both wisdom and emotional resilience. Trust is essential in any relationship, but when it becomes a crutch, it can lead to disappointment and vulnerability. The Stoics teach us to trust others while remaining anchored in our own self-reliance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This reminds us that while we can trust others, our peace and stability should never hinge on their actions or approval. Think about the way you approach friendships or partnerships. Do you set clear boundaries, or do you find yourself compromising your values to maintain harmony? A practical example might be a friend who constantly asks for favors but rarely reciprocates. A Stoic approach would involve being generous and kind, but also firm in communicating your limits. Trust doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means being honest about what you can and cannot do, and trusting that the relationship can withstand those boundaries. This balance isn't always easy to strike, but it's essential for maintaining both healthy relationships and inner peace. How can you trust others while staying true to yourself? It starts with recognizing that trust is a choice, not an obligation. You can choose to trust someone's intentions without surrendering your emotional independence. And in doing so, you create space for genuine connection, free from the weight of dependency. Gratitude can transform how we experience betrayal. It's not about ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't hurt. Instead, it's about shifting our focus from what we've lost to what we still have. This shift doesn't erase the betrayal, but it gives us a way to move forward with strength and clarity. Think of it as a mental pivot, a deliberate choice to anchor ourselves in the good that remains, even when the world feels uncertain. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." This idea is powerful, especially when betrayal leaves us feeling empty or wronged. By practicing gratitude, we remind ourselves that life is still full of value, even in the midst of hardship. It's not about denying the pain, it's about refusing to let that pain define us entirely. Take, for example, someone who's been betrayed by a close friend. It's easy to dwell on the loss of trust, the hurtful words, or the broken promises. But what if, in that same moment, they also took stock of the other relationships in their life? The ones that remain strong, the people who have shown up for them time and time again. What if they found gratitude for the lessons learned, even in the midst of the pain? This doesn't mean the betrayal didn't matter. It means they're choosing to see the bigger picture, to find light even in the shadows. So, what are you grateful for, even in the face of betrayal? Maybe it's the support of loved ones, the strength you've discovered within yourself, or the opportunity to grow and rebuild. Gratitude doesn't ask us to forget the past. It invites us to see the present with fresh eyes, and in doing so, it helps us heal, one small moment of appreciation at a time. How can self-reflection help us process betrayal? This is a question the Stoics ask themselves often, and their answer lies in one of their most powerful tools, journaling. The Stoic practice of self-reflection isn't just about thinking, it's about writing, analyzing, and understanding our emotions with clarity and purpose. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." For the Stoics, self-awareness wasn't optional, it was essential for growth, especially in the face of betrayal. When someone betrays us, our first reaction is often emotional, anger, hurt, or even despair. But the Stoics teach us to pause, step back, and ask ourselves, why does this feel so painful? What part of this is within my control, and what isn't? Journaling becomes a way to untangle these thoughts. By writing down your feelings, you create space to examine them objectively. For example, imagine you've been betrayed by a close friend. Instead of letting the hurt fester, you sit down and write about the event, not to dwell on it, but to understand it. What did the betrayal reveal about your expectations? How did you respond? And was that response aligned with your values? This process helps you move from emotional reaction to thoughtful reflection. Here's a practical way to apply this. Set aside time each evening to write about your day. Focus not just on what happened, but on how you reacted. Were you calm and rational, or did emotions take over? Over time, this habit builds self-awareness, helping you handle betrayal and life's other challenges with greater wisdom and resilience. So let me leave you with this question. What insights can you gain by reflecting on your response to betrayal? Take a moment to think about it. The answers might surprise you, and they could be the first step toward healing and growth. Betrayal reminds us that nothing lasts forever. This truth, though painful, is at the heart of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics called it impermanence, the idea that everything in life, from relationships to emotions, is temporary. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, often reflected on this in his writings. He said, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It's a stark reminder that life is fleeting, and so are the things that hurt us. Betrayal, as painful as it feels, is just another part of this ever-changing world. Think about a friendship that ended unexpectedly. Maybe you trusted someone deeply, only to find out they weren't who you thought they were. It stings, and it's natural to feel anger or sadness. But here's where Stoicism offers a different perspective. Instead of clinging to the pain, you can choose to see it as a reminder of life's impermanence. That friendship, like everything else, had its time, and now it's time to let it go. This doesn't mean the betrayal didn't matter or that your feelings aren't valid. It means you're acknowledging that nothing stays the same. By embracing impermanence, you free yourself from the weight of holding onto what's already gone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." In other words, change is natural, and resisting it only brings more suffering. So, how can embracing impermanence help you move forward? When you accept that betrayal is part of life's ebb and flow, you stop trying to control what's already out of your hands. You start focusing on what you can control, your response, your mindset, and your ability to grow from the experience. Instead of dwelling on what's lost, you can begin to see the opportunity for something new. This shift in perspective isn't about dismissing your pain, it's about understanding it in the grander scheme of life. Betrayal hurts, but it's also a teacher. It shows you what you value, what you're capable of enduring, and how to rebuild when things fall apart. And in that rebuilding, you find strength you never knew you had. Why do Stoics value silence in the face of betrayal? At first glance, it might seem counterintuitive. After all, when someone hurts us, our instinct is often to lash out, to defend ourselves, or to demand justice. But Stoicism teaches us that silence can be a profound form of strength. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending the betrayal doesn't matter. Instead, it's about choosing how we respond, and sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "Remain silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary and in a few words." This isn't just advice for everyday chatter, it's a guiding principle for handling conflict and betrayal. When we remain silent, we deny the betrayer the reaction they might expect. We take away their power to provoke us, and in doing so, we reclaim our own. Silence becomes a shield, protecting our inner peace from the chaos of external events. History offers us striking examples of this principle in action. Take Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. Throughout his reign, he faced countless betrayals, from political rivals to those he trusted most. Yet, instead of retaliating with anger or public condemnation, he often chose to respond with quiet dignity. His restraint wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a demonstration of his mastery over his own emotions. By refusing to engage in the drama, he maintained his integrity and clarity of mind, even in the most trying circumstances. So, how might silence serve you in moments of betrayal? It's not about ignoring the pain or pretending everything is fine. Rather, it's about giving yourself the space to process what happened without letting the situation spiral out of control. Silence allows you to step back, to observe the situation objectively, and to decide how or if you want to respond. It's a reminder that you are in charge of your reactions, even when you can't control the actions of others. In those quiet moments, you might just find the strength to rise above the betrayal and move forward with grace. Stoicism doesn't mean facing betrayal alone. In fact, the Stoic philosophy places great value on the strength of community and the shared wisdom that comes from meaningful connections. While it's true that Stoics emphasize self-reliance and inner resilience, they also recognize that no one is an island. We're social beings, and part of our growth comes from leaning on others when life throws its hardest challenges our way. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most revered thinkers, once wrote, "Friendship always benefits, love sometimes injures." What he meant was that genuine, supportive relationships can be a source of strength, especially when we're grappling with pain or betrayal. The key is to surround yourself with people who uplift you, challenge you to grow, and remind you of your own worth. Think about a time when you faced betrayal. Maybe a friend let you down, or a colleague betrayed your trust. In those moments, it's easy to isolate yourself, to feel like you're the only one who understands the weight of what happened. But reaching out to someone you trust, whether it's a friend, family member, or mentor, can be a powerful step toward healing. It's not about wallowing in self-pity or seeking constant validation. It's about sharing your experience and gaining perspective. A trusted confidant can help you see the situation more clearly, offering insights you might not have considered on your own. So, who in your life can help you navigate betrayal with wisdom? Take a moment to reflect on the people who have shown you kindness, who have been there for you in tough times, or who simply inspire you to be your best self. These are the individuals who can remind you of your resilience even when you feel broken. And remember, seeking support isn't a sign of weakness, it's a testament to your strength. By embracing both your inner Stoic and the community around you, you're not just surviving betrayal, you're growing through it. How do Stoics balance justice and forgiveness after betrayal? This is a question that cuts to the heart of what it means to live with integrity in the face of wrongdoing. The Stoic approach to justice isn't about revenge or retaliation. It's about fairness, clarity, and maintaining your own moral compass even when others have strayed from theirs. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, wrote extensively about the importance of acting justly while remaining steadfast in your values. He believed that true justice is rooted in understanding, not in anger or vindictiveness. When someone betrays you, the Stoic response isn't to lash out or seek to harm them in return. Instead, it's to act with fairness, even if that means holding them accountable in a way that respects both your dignity and theirs. Let's take a practical example. Imagine a close friend betrays your trust. The immediate reaction might be to cut them off or retaliate in some way. But a Stoic would pause and ask, what does justice look like here? Does it mean severing the relationship entirely, or is there a way to address the betrayal with clarity and fairness? Perhaps it means having an honest conversation, setting boundaries, or even walking away if necessary, but doing so without malice or the desire to inflict pain. The key is to act with integrity, not from a place of anger or hurt. This doesn't mean you ignore what happened or pretend it didn't affect you. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your emotions, it's about channeling them into actions that align with your principles. By focusing on what's within your control, how you respond, the values you uphold, you can seek justice without letting the betrayal consume you. This is how Stoics maintain their peace even in the face of wrongdoing. So, how can you seek justice without losing your peace? Start by asking yourself what fairness truly looks like in the situation. Is your response rooted in a desire to restore balance, or is it driven by anger? By reflecting on this, you can ensure that your actions are guided by wisdom rather than emotion. In doing so, you not only uphold your own integrity but also create space for healing, both for yourself and potentially for the person who wronged you. Stoicism teaches us to treat ourselves with kindness even after betrayal. This might seem counterintuitive at first. After all, betrayal often leaves us feeling hurt, angry, or even ashamed. But here's the thing, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or punishing ourselves for feeling them. It's about understanding and navigating those emotions with wisdom and grace. And that starts with self-compassion. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." At its core, this means that true freedom comes from self-mastery, and self-mastery begins with how we treat ourselves. When we're betrayed, it's easy to fall into a cycle of self-criticism or blame. We might tell ourselves we should have seen it coming or that we somehow deserved it. But this kind of thinking only deepens the wound. Instead, Stoicism reminds us to extend the same compassion to ourselves that we would offer a close friend going through a similar hardship. Think about it this way. Imagine a friend comes to you after being betrayed. Would you tell them they deserve it? Would you pile on more guilt or shame? Of course not. You'd likely offer them comfort, encouragement, and a reminder that they're still worthy of love and respect. So why not offer that same kindness to yourself? Here's a practical example. Let's say you've been betrayed by someone you trusted deeply. Instead of dwelling on what you could have done differently, take a moment to remind yourself that betrayal is a reflection of the other person's choices, not your worth. Acknowledge the pain, but don't let it define you. Spend time doing things that nurture your well-being, whether that's journaling, taking a walk in nature, or simply allowing yourself to rest. These small acts of self-compassion can be powerful steps toward healing. So, how can you show yourself more compassion in difficult times? Maybe it's by speaking to yourself with gentleness, or by giving yourself permission to feel without judgment. Perhaps it's recognizing that growth often comes from struggle, and that you're allowed to take your time in moving forward. Whatever it looks like for you, remember this: self-compassion isn't a sign of weakness, it's a strength. It's the foundation upon which resilience is built, and it's a practice that aligns perfectly with the Stoic pursuit of inner peace. How can remembering death help us handle betrayal? At first glance, it might seem like an odd question, but for the Stoics, reflecting on mortality, what they called Memento Mori, was a powerful tool for gaining perspective. It's not about dwelling on morbid thoughts, but rather about recognizing the impermanence of life. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." This idea reminds us that life is fleeting, and the moments we spend holding on to pain or resentment are moments we'll never get back. When we face betrayal, it's easy to get caught up in the sting of it, the anger, the hurt, the sense of injustice. But what if we paused and asked ourselves, how much of my limited time do I want to give to this pain? Memento Mori teaches us to step back and see betrayal not as an all-consuming event, but as a single thread in the larger tapestry of life. It doesn't mean the betrayal doesn't matter. It means we choose how much weight to give it. Let's bring this into a modern context. Imagine someone you trusted deeply betrays you, a friend, a partner, a colleague. It hurts, and it's natural to feel that hurt. But if you take a moment to reflect on the bigger picture, the fact that life is short and none of us knows how much time we have, you might find yourself asking, is this betrayal worth sacrificing my peace or my joy? When we view betrayal through the lens of mortality, it often shrinks in size. It becomes less about the person who hurt us and more about how we want to spend the precious time we have. So how might remembering death change your response to betrayal? Could it help you let go of grudges faster or approach the situation with a calmer mind? The Stoics believed that by keeping death in mind, we live more fully, love more deeply, and let go of what doesn't truly matter. And sometimes that's exactly what we need to move forward. Humility can help us move past betrayal without bitterness. It's a powerful tool, not just for healing, but for transforming how we see ourselves and the world. The Stoics viewed humility as one of the highest virtues, a way to ground ourselves in reality, free from the ego's distortions. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on this in his meditations, reminding himself to stay humble even as Emperor of Rome. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't just about mortality. It was a call to recognize how small we are in the grand scheme of things, how little control we truly have over others, and how much we can still control within ourselves. When betrayal strikes, it's natural to feel anger, resentment, or even a desire for revenge. But humility invites us to pause and ask, could there be something to learn here? Could I, too, have made mistakes? This isn't about blaming ourselves or excusing the wrongdoer. It's about acknowledging our shared humanity. Even in the face of betrayal, humility helps us see that everyone, including ourselves, is flawed and capable of error. It's a perspective that softens the edges of pain and opens the door to growth. Think about a time when you admitted your own flaws after someone hurt you. Maybe you realized you weren't perfect either, or that you hadn't always communicated clearly. That moment of humility doesn't erase the betrayal, but it changes how you carry it. Instead of letting bitterness weigh you down, you can choose to grow from the experience, to become wiser and more resilient. So, how can humility help you heal from betrayal? Perhaps it's by letting go of the need to be right, or by focusing on what you can control, your own actions and reactions. Or maybe it's simply by reminding yourself that no one, not even you, is immune to mistakes. Humility, in the Stoic sense, isn't about weakness, it's about strength. The strength to face reality, to grow, and to move forward without letting bitterness define you. What does it mean to let go stoically? At its core, Stoic detachment isn't about indifference or shutting yourself off from the world. It's about understanding that some things, people, outcomes, even emotions are beyond your control. And when you accept that, you free yourself from the weight of trying to control the uncontrollable. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. That's the essence of Stoic letting go, recognizing that clinging to what you can't change only leads to suffering. Think about it this way. Imagine you're in a toxic relationship. You've tried to fix it, to make it work, but it's clear that the other person isn't willing to meet you halfway. The Stoic approach here isn't to suppress your feelings or pretend everything's fine. It's to acknowledge the situation for what it is, accept that you can't force someone to change, and then choose to let go. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop allowing the situation to control your peace of mind. By releasing your attachment to how you think things should be, you create space for what actually is. Now, here's a question to ponder. What are you holding onto that's preventing you from moving forward? Is it a grudge, a dream that didn't pan out, or a relationship that's run its course? The act of letting go isn't easy. It requires courage and self-awareness. But when you do, you'll find a sense of freedom that allows you to live more fully, more authentically, and more in alignment with your values. And isn't that what a good life is all about? Acceptance is the first step toward healing from betrayal. It's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist or brushing it aside. It's about acknowledging reality as it is without resistance. For the Stoics, acceptance isn't passive. It's an active choice to confront the truth and find peace within it. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant is that our refusal to accept what's happened often causes more anguish than the event itself. By embracing reality, we strip away the layers of unnecessary suffering and begin to reclaim our inner calm. Think about a betrayal you've experienced. Maybe it was a friend who turned their back on you or a partner who broke your trust. The immediate reaction might be anger, denial, or even the urge to fight back. But what if, instead of resisting, you chose to accept it fully? Not to condone the betrayal, but to see it for what it is, a moment outside of your control that has already happened. What would it feel like to let go of the struggle against it, to stop replaying the what-ifs and should-haves in your mind? Here's a modern example. Imagine someone you trusted shared a private secret of yours with others. The betrayal stings, and your first instinct might be to confront them, demand an apology, or even retaliate. But the Stoic approach would be to pause and ask, what can I control here? You can't change what's been done, but you can control how you respond. Acceptance allows you to move forward without being chained to the past. It's not easy, but it's powerful. When you stop fighting against what's already happened, you create space to heal and grow. So, what would it feel like to fully accept this betrayal? It might feel like a weight lifting off your shoulders, or like stepping out of a storm into calm. It doesn't mean you forget or excuse the hurt, but it does mean you stop letting it define your present. Acceptance is the bridge between pain and peace, and it's a bridge the Stoics believed everyone can cross if they choose to. How can loving your fate help you handle betrayal? This question lies at the heart of one of Stoicism's most profound practices, Amor Fati, or the love of fate. At first glance, it might seem counterintuitive. How can you love something as painful as betrayal? But Stoicism teaches us that adversity isn't just something to endure. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to become stronger. Amor Fati is about embracing everything that happens to you, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. It's about seeing every event, even betrayal, as a thread in the larger tapestry of your life. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, wrote extensively about this idea. He reminded himself and us that everything that happens is part of the natural order of the universe. In his meditations, he said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacles we face, including betrayal, aren't just random misfortunes. They're opportunities to practice resilience, to refine our character, and to align ourselves with the flow of life. Let's break this down with a relatable example. Imagine you've been betrayed by someone you trusted deeply. At first, the pain feels overwhelming, and it's natural to want to resist or resent what's happened. But what if, instead of fighting against it, you chose to love your fate? What if you saw this betrayal not as a personal attack, but as a chance to deepen your understanding of trust, to reevaluate your relationships, and to grow into a more grounded version of yourself. Amor Fati doesn't mean you have to like what happened. It means you choose to find meaning in it. Think of it like this: a tree doesn't grow taller and stronger without weathering storms. The wind and rain, though harsh, are what give the tree its resilience. In the same way, betrayal, when embraced with Amor Fati, can become the wind that shapes your character. It's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that the pain has a purpose. So here's a question to reflect on. How can you love your fate, even in the face of betrayal? What would it look like to see this experience not as a setback, but as a stepping stone? Amor Fati is a practice, not a one-time decision. It's about training yourself to meet life's challenges with openness and curiosity, knowing that every moment, no matter how difficult, is a gift in disguise. Courage is essential for overcoming betrayal. It's not just about standing tall in the face of adversity. It's about choosing to move forward with integrity, even when every instinct might tell you to retreat or retaliate. The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw courage as one of the 4 cardinal virtues, a fundamental quality that allows us to face life's hardships with clarity and purpose. As Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that courage isn't about avoiding pain or pretending betrayal doesn't hurt. It's about responding to it in a way that aligns with your values and preserves your inner strength. Imagine this scenario. You've been betrayed by someone you trusted deeply, a friend, a partner, or even a colleague. The initial sting might leave you feeling vulnerable, angry, or even paralyzed. But here's where courage comes into play. Instead of letting that betrayal define you or dictate your actions, you choose to stand up for yourself, not with anger or vengeance, but with calm resolve. You might confront the situation directly, set boundaries, or simply decide to walk away with dignity. This is courage in action, the ability to face what's happened, process it, and take steps forward without losing sight of who you are. So, how can you cultivate this kind of courage in your own life, especially when betrayal leaves you feeling shaken? Start by reminding yourself that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Reflect on your core values and ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be in this situation? The Stoics believed that true bravery comes from aligning your actions with your principles, even when it's difficult. It's about choosing to rise above the chaos and respond in a way that honors your self-respect. Courage, in this sense, becomes a daily practice, a commitment to facing life's challenges with resilience and grace. How can Stoicism lead to inner freedom after betrayal? At its core, Stoicism teaches us that true freedom isn't about controlling the world around us, but about mastering our own mind. When betrayal strikes, it's easy to feel trapped by anger, hurt, or resentment. But the Stoics remind us that these emotions don't have to define us. They're not chains we're forced to wear, they're storms we can choose to weather with calm and clarity. Seneca once wrote, "The mind that is anxious about the future is miserable." This idea cuts straight to the heart of Stoic philosophy. Betrayal often leaves us fixated on what went wrong, replaying the past or dreading the future. But inner freedom begins when we shift our focus to what we can control, our thoughts, our judgments, and our responses. The mind, as Seneca suggests, is the one place where we can always find refuge, no matter how chaotic the outside world becomes. Think about a modern example. Imagine someone who's been betrayed by a close friend. At first, they might feel consumed by bitterness, replaying conversations and questioning their own judgment. But through Stoic practice, they begin to see that their pain doesn't come from the betrayal itself, but from their attachment to the idea of how things should have been. By releasing that attachment and focusing on their own virtue, choosing kindness over spite, understanding over vengeance, they reclaim their inner freedom. The betrayal no longer holds power over them. So, what would inner freedom look like for you right now? Is it letting go of resentment, finding peace in the present moment, or simply choosing to respond to life's challenges with dignity? The Stoic path invites you to explore these questions not as a way to erase the pain of betrayal, but as a way to rise above it. Because true freedom isn't about avoiding hardship, it's about finding strength within it. Betrayal can be a catalyst for personal growth. For the Stoics, challenges, no matter how painful, are not obstacles but opportunities to refine our character and strengthen our resilience. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on this idea, writing that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the very things that hurt us can also teach us, if we're willing to see them as lessons rather than setbacks. Think about it. Betrayal often shakes us to our core, forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our relationships, and our expectations. But rather than letting it define us, we can use it as a mirror to reflect on where we need to grow. Maybe it reveals a tendency to trust too easily or an over-reliance on others for validation. Or perhaps it shows us where we need to set stronger boundaries. These are all opportunities to become more self-aware, more grounded, and ultimately more aligned with Stoic principles. Consider this: when someone betrays us, it's natural to feel anger or resentment. But Stoicism teaches us to shift our focus from what's been done to us to what we can do with it. How can we use this experience to cultivate wisdom, patience, or even compassion? For example, imagine a friend who betrays your trust. Instead of dwelling on the hurt, you could ask yourself, what can I learn from this about the nature of trust? How can I grow stronger in my ability to forgive without compromising my self-respect? So let's turn this inward for a moment. How can you use this betrayal as a stepping stone for growth? What lessons might it be offering you about your own values, your reactions, or your path forward? The Stoics believed that every challenge carries the seed of transformation, if we're willing to plant it and nurture it. Betrayal, as painful as it is, can be that seed. It's up to us to decide what grows from it. As we come to the end of this journey, let's take a moment to revisit the core Stoic principles that can guide us through the storm of betrayal. Acceptance, resilience, and emotional detachment are not just lofty ideals, they are practical tools. Tools that help us navigate the chaos of life with a steady hand and a clear mind. Betrayal, as painful as it is, has the potential to be one of our greatest teachers. It forces us to confront our vulnerabilities, to question our assumptions, and to grow stronger in the process. The Stoics remind us that we cannot control what others do, only how we respond. When we choose to meet betrayal with acceptance rather than resistance, we reclaim our power. When we cultivate resilience, we build an inner strength that no external event can shake. And when we practice emotional detachment, we free ourselves from the grip of anger, bitterness, and resentment. These are the lessons that turn betrayal from a wound into wisdom. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet profound truth captures the essence of Stoic philosophy. Adversity, betrayal, pain, they are not the end of the story. They are the raw materials from which we can craft a life of greater meaning and purpose. As you reflect on what you've learned today, ask yourself this: how can you apply these principles in your own life? How can you transform your next moment of hurt into an opportunity for growth? The path of Stoicism isn't about avoiding pain, it's about using pain as a stepping stone to become the best version of yourself. If this message resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences or insights in the comments below. And if you found value in this video, consider subscribing for more Stoic wisdom to help you navigate life's challenges with clarity and calm. Remember, every setback is a setup for a comeback. Until next time, stay strong, stay stoic, and keep moving